Welcome to Wild and Exposed, your number one adventure, nature, and outdoor photography podcast. Wild and Exposed is hosted by Mike Mauro, Ron Hayes, Jason Loftus, and Mark Raycroft. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed podcast. We just had a great weekend where we visited Yellowstone National Park. Finally got in the field, back with Jason Loftus, who was there and set that trip up. Jason, how's it been since you got home?
It's been great. You know, it's funny. I always talk on the show how I have this OCD issue with not being able to work through files unless they're in sequential order, right? So if I do a shoot, I can't mess with those files until I get done with the files I've already done previously. Little OCD issue for me, but anyways, it feels really good because it's Wednesday after the shoot. We got home on Sunday evening, and I am all done with that shoot. So I'm all caught up, and I'll tell you what, it feels really good. to not have any of those weighing on me. So
I'll be honest, I was a little bit shocked because I sent you a text of one of the images that I had and you said, yeah, I just went through that one myself for that same shoot.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to hear that you were already in the middle of that.
We had a great shoot. We had quite a few images that came from it, even though it was kind of slow. I felt like we capitalized on quite a few images. So, yeah. Anyways, keep going. Enough of that.
Tonight we got a great guest for you. Some great stories from the field, and a guy who does it a little bit different than most. And I think you're going to be pleased to hear some of the things that Jimmy Berenstein has to tell us. Welcome, Jimmy, to the show. And it's Jimmy B in the Wild, if you know him from Instagram. But we want to welcome you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here talking with you guys tonight.
Full story. We ran into Jimmy in the park on our trip this weekend, and some of the stories that he was just sharing while we were waiting for a subject to make a move kind of got me thinking. And I know Jason's mentioned we should have him on before, but I think you guys will enjoy this podcast and kind of the way Jimmy goes about his business. So let's fire it off right away this time, Jason, because I think this could be a doozy. Jimmy, what is your favorite ever outdoor experience?
You know, that's such a hard question to answer. That's like saying, what's my favorite piece of apple pie? It's just, I mean, every experience that I have in nature is just so amazing. But, you know, this is something I've thought about a lot. And there's a couple experiences that stand out a little bit more than others. And a few years ago, I was backpacking through Montana. It was late fall. Just really cold time of year, beautiful time of year to be out in nature. And I was getting everything set to get put away for the night, getting ready to go to bed. And I was hanging up my bear bag, and I'm pulling it up, tying it off, and I see something move out of the corner of my eye. And I look over, and I thought it was a big bear coming out of the brush nearby. And it was just dark enough where I couldn't exactly tell. Like, I could see the outline of what it was, and that's why I thought it was a bear at first. But once it got closer, I noticed it was this enormous black wolf. And, you know, wolves are my absolute favorite of any animal out there. And this wolf just comes up, and, you know, I just gotten done hanging my bear bag, and he comes close enough to me where I couldn't focus on him with my camera. And I had, Tamron lens on there, and it's got about a 6-7 foot focal range, and I couldn't focus on him because he was so close. He was just standing there, and he was enormous, and he was just looking at me, and he looked at me, looked up at the bear bag, looked back at me, looked at the bear bag, and then he looked behind me. And so I turned around behind and looked, and there were two more circling in from behind, two more black wolves just kind of loping behind. And he kind of looked at them, and then he ran off, and they all kind of ran off into the trees. And for the next, like 7-ish minutes, the whole pack just around my camp just howled nonstop. And it was just, I mean, getting goosebumps now just talking about it. It was such an amazing experience. And just, wolves in the first place are amazing. Being out in such a beautiful place was fantastic. But just to have them, the whole pack howling all around me was just phenomenal. Such an awesome, awesome experience.
So, just for everybody that doesn't camp in bear country, could you explain what you mean by bear bag?
Yeah, sorry. So, a bear bag is where you keep all of your scented items, all your food. So, I was out there for a while. I've got all my food jammed into this bag. I've got my toothpaste, my deodorant, all that stuff, anything that smells that might attract a bear. I've got it shoved into this bag. And you pick a limb of a tree, at least 12 feet or so off the ground, and a couple feet away from the tree, and you throw a line over that limb, and you hoist your bag up and you tie it off. That way, no bears in the area, if they smell that, just because they have excellent sense of smell. If they smell that, they're unable to get to it and become habituated or used to human food, anything like that. So it's just a safety precaution that you take when you're out in bear country to make sure that they're not getting into trouble.
Awesome. So we alluded to you kind of do things a little bit differently. And that is a good lead in to what we're talking about. So kind of tell us about your photography background, how you got involved, and what kind of country you like to spend your time in.
So I got my first camera. I was about 7-ish years old. I just got a little film camera, and that's like all I wanted for Christmas. So my dad got me that for Christmas. And, I grew up on these nature shows, PBS Nature. That was my favorite show growing up. I always had library books that I would get from school or the library, and they were always about animals and nature. And so just, growing up, I love nature. I love wildlife. It's just kind of in my blood, I guess, ingrained in me. And so just from a very young age, I was just fascinated with these nature shows and these books when you could read about the authors or the photographers and just seeing what these people would do for pictures. I remember reading about this one guy. He spent like 6 months in a photo blind just to photograph a snow leopard, and it just crazy stuff like that. And it just always fascinated me. So as a child with this little film camera, I would go out to my grandma's house out in California, and she had decent sized property out there, and she had black-tailed deer and raccoons and opossums, the occasional mountain lion, even just so many cool animals that would come through her property. And I would just go out hiking, looking for what I could find throughout the day, and get what pictures I could. And I would always find these mountain lion carcasses and whatnot, and I'd get my little notepad and write down when I saw it and where I saw it and what pieces of it was eaten first, just different things like that. And so I've always loved wildlife ever since I was just a little kid. And I got my first DSLR, years later, um, about 8, 9 years ago. And that's when I really decided that, hey, I'm going to do this. I always loved these photographers that I saw in these shows and read about in these books growing up. I'm going to give it a try and see what I can do. And that's when I really started trying to learn photography and not just point and shoot or whatever. And so I started off a little bit with landscape photography. I wasn't doing a whole lot of wildlife until about 6 years ago or so. And that's when I really jumped into the wildlife photography. I've always loved observing wildlife, like I alluded to before. But yeah, about 6 or so years ago, that's when I really jumped in with the camera and started, making wildlife photography goals and different things like that. And so I've just always loved photography, different things like that. And then to answer your other question of how I kind of do things, how I enjoy doing things, you say it's different, but to me it's just normal. But I guess most people don't do it this way. But I love getting out into the backcountry. I love photographing backcountry wildlife. So, loading up my backpack and just escaping into the mountains for days or even weeks at a time, and just having everything I need on my back, carrying my camera. That's the way I love finding wildlife, just tracking, being one, as cheesy as that sounds, being one with nature, and just, going about it much like a hunter would, or, something like that. But, I've got a camera instead, and that's how I enjoy photographing wildlife the most.
Yeah, and I think the majority of our audience are hobbyist photographers and probably spend their time in areas where animals are habituated. And to find those subjects that other people don't get to, there's a special kind of reward for that.
For sure. And, I do my fair share of photographing more habituated wildlife. Like you mentioned before, I ran into you guys in Yellowstone this last weekend, and the wildlife along the road there, they're about as habituated as you can get. And I still love that type of photography. It's just, there's something for me that escaping out into the backcountry, it's just a different level for me of enjoyment, and the experiences that come with it. That's another important part of it for me, is the experiences. And so that's a huge part for me. But I do love the roadside photography as well, the more habituated national park wildlife, stuff like that. It's just all great. I mean, wildlife's wildlife. I'll take whatever I can get.
Yeah, we talk about it, right? I mean, for a lot of folks, they don't have a lot of time to get out and do this kind of stuff, especially the folks that are hobbyists and do it on their weekends and their free time. So, going to a place like Yellowstone is probably a bigger bang for your buck, because to go out and do it like you do, Jimmy, a lot, it's not always as productive. If you're, the quantity of images you may get, you may go on a trip like that and may not even get, any animal images necessarily. But when you do, it's more rewarding for sure. And I was just going to say, I've been, I'm embarrassed to admit that I've been friends with Jimmy for, I don't know, 6-7 years now. I guess we met probably when you first started getting into wildlife out on Antelope Island, of all places. And I remember running into you in the field out there and just sitting down and chatting one evening with you, and getting to know you a little bit better. And we've just kind of stayed in touch ever since. But yeah, no, I'm embarrassed to admit, because I've been friends with you for so long, that I wasn't connected close enough to know that you had a YouTube channel, and that you have, taken this passion and you're doing it full time now. And maybe we could talk a little bit more about that too. I'm very interested to hear how that transition was for you. But the point I was trying to make was watching your YouTube channel, and I've known this anyways, just because I know you a little bit. But watching your YouTube channel, you can definitely see the passion of what you do, and it shines through in your videos. And I really have enjoyed watching the videos. I've probably watched only about 10 of them so far, but I'm excited to watch the next few. I've kind of started at the back, and I'm just working through them, and I've gotten through your a bear trip that you did. You had 4 episodes or so of that. But anyways, the passion just really shines through. And when you say you love all those animals, I don't, I know you're not lying. I know you mean that. And it's actually really enjoyable to watch your videos and to see that passion shining through. So anyways, just a little bit of a kudos to you for making the leap and, chasing this passion and doing it full time. But maybe that's a good way to transition into you talking a little bit about, how that was, and, maybe how you're approaching it.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate you saying that. Those videos, I love putting them together. They're so much fun. And it's always rewarding when I hear somebody say that they enjoy watching them. And, I've had some people say it feels like they're right there with me, experiencing what I'm experiencing. And that's my goal as I put those videos together, is I want the viewer to feel like they're right there by my side, seeing that animal. And, I truly am passionate about wildlife and nature. And it's just so fun to get out there and to see so many amazing species to photograph and just observe from a distance and stuff like that. So I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot. And just to kind of go into that, like you had mentioned, of how that transition was and how that worked. So, just to give a little bit of a background, I worked for, I mean, over a decade, and I always thought this was going to be my career, but in the financial industry, I managed a real estate department for a local financial institution. And that's what I did, and I was stuck behind a desk all the time. And, I'm very grateful for that job and what it enabled me to do throughout that time. But it got to the point where I just had to really analyze my life and where it was going and what I had accomplished after, years of being at this job that, again, I'm grateful for, but it's never what I wanted to do full time as a kid. And I feel like, when we're kids, we've got these dreams that we always think about. And then as we grow older, those dreams just kind of turn into daydreams, things that'll never happen. And, I had a couple experiences that I won't get into, but it really made me analyze just, where things were going and where I wanted them to go. And, the thing that was always right there at the top was becoming a professional wildlife photographer. So, I would get out as often as I could while I was working this job every weekend almost, and before work and after work, a lot of days just to photograph whatever I could. And it was so fun. And so finally, I just, in talking with my wife, we discussed priorities and all sorts of things and goals and dreams, all that stuff. And we just decided to go for it. So for the next few years, I worked the equivalent of essentially two full-time jobs, just getting ready to make the leap, just because I knew it would be a lot more frugal living for the first, part of things, quitting my job and everything. So I worked essentially the equivalent of two full-time jobs just to get ready to make the leap. And then about 15 months ago, I gave my notice and left my job. And, the only regret I have of that whole experience was not doing it sooner. Honestly, it has been so much fun. And, I've started building this YouTube channel. It's coming along, and it's been really fun putting together. And I've got some other projects I'm working on the side as well. But, it's just been so rewarding, and it's brought my family so much joy to make this transition. And it's just been fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, you talked about working two jobs. I mean, I'm assuming you were trying to just get some financial things squared away in that, or was that also, prepping to have content and things of that nature too? Was there some of that involved, or, I'm really curious about that. So, anyways.
Yeah, great question. A little bit of both. So I had my full-time job. That was more than a full-time job. And then I had a couple side jobs that I started here and there, just in other fields, just to start saving up money, like you indicated, just to kind of get a little nest egg saved up in preparation. But also, going out pretty much daily with the camera just to get content built up. Before I ever started the YouTube channel, I had 12 videos that I would post on that channel. I had those all shot and edited, ready to upload, just to have a little buffer in case, there's a week I couldn't get a video out or something. And so, yeah, a little bit of both, the combination of working additional job as well as just trying to really boost the photography.
Yeah, very cool. Sorry, Ron, you were going to say something.
Well, I just was going to say I feel your pain on that because it's the same way. And then you add the podcast onto that, which people think we make all kinds of money on this podcast, but it doesn't pay us anything. In fact, it's a money pit, but it's something that we enjoy doing, and getting to meet people like yourself and hear your story. It's a passion project more than anything else, but doing the photography thing plus another full-time job, it's definitely something that the whole family needs to buy into because it is a strain on your time.
For sure. And I feel so blessed to have, a wife and son that support me and in this endeavor, and I try to support them as much as I can as well, and in their goals and everything. And it's just great to be in it together as a family. It's been wonderful.
Just to your point, Jimmy, about having the family involved, a couple of my favorite videos so far have been the ones where your wife and your kid have been tagging along. So, anyways, just I would keep that going just from my own perspective. I think that's really neat. And then I know those are probably just local hikes and their day hikes and stuff, but yeah, just again, another kudos to you. I think the videos are really well done, and I'm sure you've progressed over time. So I'm excited to see, how the newer ones actually look too. But
I was going to kind of jump back to when we met. So part of the doing things a little bit differently is the morning that we ran into you. I think it was at the coldest point. It was about 10 below. And we are sleeping in this nice cozy house that Jason found for us, the VRBO. And you were sleeping where?
Not in the house. So I was just sleeping outside in the bed of my truck in a sleeping bag and a little bivy sack. But, it's a good way to go.
We're not talking under the topper.
Yeah, right.
The
Let's
bivy
be
sack
clear.
is just in the back of the truck.
Hey, it's the best way to see the stars at night and hear the owls in the area and everything. So it's a great way to go if you're short on funds. Even if you're not, it's just a great way to go.
Yeah, no, it's funny. We've all been there. I think everybody here tonight has absolutely done the truck camping or the car camping for sure. I just I've never done it in the middle of the winter. I guess that's what I'd say. So, but what's funny is knowing you, I know that you love that. You love all of it. You love the whole adventure. And that's just another doing it differently, right? I mean, I think your passion is to go out where you hope you don't run into anybody else, and to try to have solitude, and to have those, and just to let nature unfold. And then you are there with your camera to try to capture whatever comes your way. And I don't know, it's refreshing. A lot of us don't. Again, it's hard when you don't have time to necessarily do that, and you're trying to get images and trying to build a portfolio, and you're trying to get the biggest bang for your buck. But if you're doing it depending on what you're doing it for, if you're doing it for resetting yourself and clearing your mind and having those kind of experiences, I mean, you're definitely doing it right. And I'm a little jealous. I think it'd be fun to go along one of these times on one of your little adventures. But then that kind of defeats the purpose. I get it, but yeah, I'm a little jealous of the experiences that you're having and the way you approach things.
No, and that's good to hear. And I think I really like what you said, where it comes down to what your purpose or priority is out there. You say a lot of people who don't have the time to go out and do the backpacking, they go out to these places that we talked about, and they're just trying to get the bang for their buck as much as they can, as much content as they can with the amount of time. And that's great. If that's your purpose going out and you accomplish it, or even if you're just getting out and doing it, that's great. Like, that's the most important part, is just be out there and be enjoying yourself no matter how you're doing it. And like you said, for me, it's a way to reset. It's a way to just step back from the crowds. And I've done that so many times in Yellowstone, where there's some amazing experience happening 100 yards off the road, and there's 40 photographers lined up, and I'll leave that situation and miss just some amazing opportunities, and I'll go take a hike and see a couple birds, or a rabbit running around, or coyote, or whatever it is, and I'll get some pictures, and maybe I missed out on that opportunity. But for me, like you indicated, it's about getting out into nature and the solitude that comes with it, and just being one with your surroundings, and that reset that you talked about. That's so important for me. And so I guess I should be careful when I say this, but I'll gladly give up a more epic encounter for some more secluded backcountry experiences. Not to say I'll always do that, but I've been known to do that a lot. So.
Yeah, I've seen you do it personally, and so I don't doubt that for a minute. And there's been times when I'm thinking to myself, where is he going? What's he doing? He's just going to walk away from this. But I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? Yeah, we don't need to beat that horse. It's you're doing it for a specific reason, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Some people just don't like those crowds at all. And matter of fact, most of us don't like those crowds, to be quite honest. It's just we kind of put up with them, and unfortunately, our parks are getting loved to death, and there's lots and lots more people. Fortunately, there's more and more people that are enjoying the outdoors and enjoying the parks. Unfortunately, that leads to big crowds and big traffic jams, and lots of people getting the same images. And I think that's another benefit from the way you're approaching things. Is I'm pretty sure most of the images you have in your portfolio, there was nobody else there with you, and nobody else has that image. You know what I mean? And there's something to be said for that.
No, and that's good to bring that point up, because I love the encounters with people. I mean, spending time with you and Ron with those bison that we were at, a couple days ago, that was just fun to talk to you guys. I mean, it's been over a year since I've seen Jason, Ron. That was the first time we've met in person, and so it was just great to chat with you guys. And I do love that aspect. But yeah, it is fun to have an image that you're not going to see, posted on Instagram by 5 other people or whatever. Not to say that you can't come away from a scenario like that, putting your own flair on an image. I mean, I've been lined up with photographers before, and I'll see the images after, and I just think, dang, how did they do that? Or look what they did with the lighting, just different things like that. And you can definitely put your own flair on those images and those scenarios. But I do like, finding those animals and having those encounters where I know that I'm not going to see those images anywhere else. It is fun.
Yeah, matter of fact, you and I were visiting while everybody else was still shooting, because
Yeah.
you were content to visit and I had way too much lens to do anything else. So it was good to have somebody to talk to.
Well, I apologize for distracting you if I did it all.
Oh,
but
no.
yeah, it's
No, not at all.
fun to meet you and to visit a little
Not
bit.
at all. It was good to visit.
Did you even take a photo when you walked out there, Jimmy? Honestly, I was thinking about that, because I
No,
don't think
I
you did.
didn't.
I think you literally walked out there and basically cradled your camera while it was snowing on us, and just hung out and chatted with us, which was really which was fun. It was really good. That's a big part. We talk about this all the time, but that's a big part of why I like this so much. Is the people that we meet and the friendships we make, and the folks that share the same kind of passion. But yeah, you didn't take a single photo. I saw you walk out there and just pretty much hold your camera and keep Ron some company while we were up front of him and getting in his way, so.
Yeah, I brought my camera in case something just totally wild happened. But I walked out with it with kind of the knowledge that I probably wasn't going to take a picture, but just have it there and ready just in case.
Right.
So looking at your portfolio, you've spent a lot of time all over the Rockies, but also in Alaska. Now, when you go to Alaska, are you camping the same way?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite places to go backpacking or camping. So yeah, it's all out of a backpack, and I talk about this a little bit in one of my videos. I made a video that talks about the logistics of planning a trip like that and how I go about it personally. And just to summarize that, I kind of research the area that I want to go explore, and I'll contact the local pilots, compare rates and reviews, proximity, all that stuff, and hire a pilot to go drop me off where I want them to drop me off. And I'll usually stay out there for about 2 weeks or so, or just under 2 weeks, sometimes just over. And it's just me and the wildlife out there, and it's great. I love it. It's one of my favorite places, if not my favorite place to go backpacking, and it's just so much fun. It's so pretty up there.
I was going to say Alaska's tough to beat, whether you're backpacking, boating, kayaking, doesn't matter. You can find something to shoot everywhere, and it's always just incredible.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful place. I'm already dreaming about the next time I'll be up there. It's just an amazing place.
Does that become a yearly trip for you?
Yeah, that's become a yearly trip. I think it's been 5 years now, I believe. But yeah, annual trip, and yeah, I've got some stuff that I'm working on where hopefully in the next year or two it'll become more often than just once a year. So yeah, just amazing place, like I said before.
Very cool. Go ahead,
Now, that
Ron.
being said, I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, but you're doing some workshops as well, correct?
So yeah, I'm working on getting some private workshops set up. Just because I've had a lot of people talk to me about Alaska and just say, "Oh, I wish I could experience something like that," or I don't have the time to go out and explore the areas to find the wildlife. I just want to photograph some bears or whatever it is. So um, I've started working on putting some workshops together and getting all the logistics behind that planned, all the transportation, base camp, safety, all that stuff. And it's been a whole lot of fun, and not just in Alaska with bears, but other places within the United States as well. I'm getting some workshops that I'm kind of um, getting prepped in my head, and trying to figure out all the logistics behind those. So that's something I'm hoping to be rolling out here in the next year or two is kind of my goal.
So, in your preparation for that, how much of the contact time are you spending letting people know that just how real that experience is going to be and what to be prepared for?
What do you mean by that?
Well, knowing the difference between taking a drive into the first 15 miles in Denali to backpacking clear to Wonder Lake, 90 miles in the back.
I got you. So those workshops they are going to be a little bit different, just because most people. Well, I don't want to say most people. I don't want to generalize, but a lot of people, they're not going to want to do a lot of that backpacking portion of it. They just want to go out and spend time with bears, and that's a lot of what I do in Alaska. Is I've just got my base camp. There's been two trips now where I actually backpack, for miles and miles each day and set up a new base camp. And those are fun. But once I find a good, productive area out there in Alaska, I'll usually just pitch my base camp and I'll sit tight. And so that's kind of how I'm planning the workshops to be is, I'll go out beforehand and I'll have explored these areas, found where the bears are in this example, and I'll have the base camp all set up and everything. And, I'll prep people, kind of like you're asking. I'll prep them and just say, hey, it's a little bit different. We're not staying in a lodge. We've got our base camp in tents, whatever, and just prep them in that way. But it's not going to be a lot of rigorous, hiking with 60 pounds of gear each day, all that stuff. So, just trying to figure all that out.
So this is you're just kind of getting this plan unknown. Maybe we're asking too many questions about it because you're still kind of exploring what this might look like. It sounds like, but are you thinking this is going to be like pretty personalized, little small workshops with maybe a couple people max, or are you talking like doing bigger ones with 5 or 6 people, or does that depend on like what people are looking for? Or is it you pretty open and flexible to those both those kinds of options, or what are you thinking?
Still trying to feel that out a little bit, but kind of my ideal way of doing it, I guess, is going to be smaller workshops just to not stress the animals out. Just because I have seen large groups before, even with habituated wildlife, and the wildlife starts getting uncomfortable because there's so many people. Even if you're staying in a group, there's just too many people sometimes. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking like 2 to 4 max is kind of what I'm thinking. But I will have multiple workshops set up for the different species and whatnot. But as well for the photographers, I want it to be a very special experience and not just a lineup of photographers each day. I want it to be, I want them to feel how I feel when I'm out in nature, just that solitude. And so, yeah, I want few enough people where I can give them that experience as well.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think if anybody's listening and curious all you need to do is go watch a couple of his videos on his YouTube channel, especially the ones on the bears in Alaska. But yeah, that's the kind of experience I'm hoping to get. I think you heard about my whole experience in my bear trip and how it got ruined with COVID and everything. So the next time I go, I'm gonna try to approach it the same way you're talking, and have that kind of experience because I don't think you could have a better experience. You're away from everybody. You're not with a big group. Like you said, the bears are going to be more natural because they're not seeing a bunch of people every day, coming through in big groups and, feeling that pressure and everything. So anyways, I think you'll be very successful with those workshops. I might have to get my name on the list for one of them. So
They should be pretty fun. I'm excited for them.
Jimmy, you spend a lot of time with the fox in the spring and multiple species, which is kind of a passion of mine also. What is your favorite species to spend time with?
Hands down, it's the kit fox. Like you mentioned, there's multiple species that I spend time with: red fox, swift fox, kit fox, primarily. And the kit fox is by far my favorite, and it's a species that maybe some of the viewers have never even heard of before. It's also called the desert kit fox. It's a desert dwelling species of fox that I find them just fascinating. They've got these huge ears to help them dissipate heat throughout the day. Keeps them cooler in their arid environment. They can go their whole lives without ever drinking water. Just the sleek form of their body is completely designed for hunting the prey that they do. And, they're just beautiful, beautiful animals. And so, yeah, hands down, kit fox is my favorite species of fox to photograph. I love them. They're so much fun.
I think a lot of people think it's interchangeable between kit fox and swift fox, but you identified those major differences, the ear size being the biggest, and then locale.
Yeah, they used to be considered the same species, but don't quote me. I don't know how many years ago it was, but they are now identified as two separate species. Some agencies still consider them as the same species, but you can clearly tell if you look at them side by side. You can clearly tell the difference, and the habitats that they live in, they're similar, but at the same time they're completely different. So it's pretty easy to tell once you've spent time observing the two species. It's pretty clear to tell that they're different.
what's the difference in habitat? One's the desert dwelling, I guess, but where does the swift fox call home then?
So the swift fox primarily in open grasslands.
Oh,
It's
okay.
kind of their preferred home out in the prairie, different areas like that. Less arid areas. They're still arid in their own right, but not nearly as much as the kit fox.
Gotcha. And so that's that I'm assuming that's high desert. I mean, are we talking like desert, like sand desert?
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much any desert in the United States, you're gonna find them in there. So, in Utah, we've got two separate deserts. We've got southern Utah, more of that red rock, and then we've got the West Desert. They're found in both of those deserts. If you go further south into Mexico, Texas, they're found there. Throughout California, the deserts out there in Nevada, just all those areas. And then you take the swift fox, and that's more the open plains, prairies, grasslands, areas like that.
But they can be a desert dweller also. I mean, especially like you said, Jason, the high deserts. Our red desert in southern Wyoming has a lot of swift fox. And I know there's been some kit fox identified in Wyoming, but I don't know that they come much out of the south end or that southern desert. Most of what you'll find in Wyoming is the swift fox, and they're in north. Yeah, I can see the kit fox are even a little bit smaller, which makes sense because they're a desert dweller. As small as a swift fox is, the kit fox is still a little bit smaller just because they're living in those arid areas.
Yeah, they're teeny. People don't realize, I mean, looking at pictures, just how small they are. I mean, they're just a little bit bigger than the size of a house cat. They're not big. The adults, especially the males, they can, when you see their big bushy tails, they can look pretty big, but I mean their bodies are just really sleek, and they're not big at all.
They look big when you don't have anything for context, except for a brush that you don't know how big it is. But you see a pronghorn fawn next to a swift fox, and it just dwarfs it.
Yeah, they're fun. We're lucky to have quite a few in, well, I don't want to say quite a few. We're lucky to have population here in Utah, but their numbers are declining, and they're considered a sensitive species here. So they're tricky to find, but yeah, just beautiful species, like I said.
So Jimmy, you've had the opportunity to have quite a few different adventures. Is there a species or a location that's like really really high on your list that you haven't been able to get to yet that you wanna experience?
Got a whole list of species that I could get into, but
Like
Don't
most
we
of
all?
us, yeah.
yeah, exactly. The top of the list is Arctic wolves, just up in the high Arctic, and I've got a trip essentially planned, not dates or anything like that, but I've got my locations pretty much planned and itinerary, all that stuff, but I just I don't have dates or the money for it yet, but that's top of the list is Arctic wolves.
And what's your gear list look like?
Sure, we want to get into this here. No, I'm just kidding. That's a fun topic. So I don't carry a ton of weight as far as weight goes, but I do have a lot of just kind of smaller items. But depending on where I'm going, what type of trip it is, I've got some sort of shelter. So whether that's a tent or a bivy sack or a tarp, something like that. I've got my sleeping system, my sleeping pad, sleeping bag, liner, all that stuff. I've got my little cook system, which the only dish that I bring other than my spoon is just a mug. It's a titanium mug. That's the only dish that I bring. And the only thing I do with it is I boil water, and then I've got some like thermal bags that I rehydrate all my homemade food in. And then I've got, water filtration, usually like a set of clothes. I've got all my camera gear, solar chargers,
So do
bear
you?
fence if I'm in Alaska. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just when you mentioned the chargers, I remember watching one of your videos, and I think you were showing your batteries and your charging system a little bit, and I was just curious if you have you found that to be effective to actually charge your batteries, on for your camera, or and maybe more specifically, what charging system are you using? Because I know for a lot of folks that end up going on an Alaskan trip, most people I know just end up buying extra batteries and not dealing with charging. So I'm really curious to see, to hear what your thoughts are on that.
So Alaska's a little bit different than other backpacking trips, especially the most recent years where I know where I'm going. I know there's bears there, so I know I'm not going to be doing a ton of hiking with all my gear every day. So what I do on those trips now, the Alaska trips, is, I'll bring like 30 batteries and just use those because I know I'm not going to have to hike with them for miles and miles each day. And the other thing with Alaska, the area that I go to, the weather there is so crazy generally that I mean, I can go like a week and a half without ever seeing the sun. It's just so overcast and rainy. And so I'm not going to get a whole lot of use out of a solar charger anyways. So yeah, that Alaska trip that I go on, or all those trips now, I don't even bring the solar charger. I just bring a ton of batteries, and then I bring a Goal Zero. It's the Sherpa 100, and I can get like 5 or 6 more charges out of that as a backup if I need to for my batteries, and the charge lasts great. For other backpacking trips, though, if I'm hiking through Utah or Montana, California, wherever it is, I'll bring my solar charger with that Sherpa 100 and less batteries, And while I'm hiking throughout the day, I just attach the solar charger onto my backpack, and I have the cord running into my backpack into that Sherpa. And then when I get to camp at night, if I've expended some batteries, I'll just start recharging them there. And it's pretty effective. I can, on a good sunny day, I can get quite a bit of power out of those panels and recharge any batteries I need to throughout the trip.
That's interesting. We'll put links to that in the show notes. We've talked about that Goal Zero before, and we'll also put links to your YouTube channel so people can get on there and subscribe and see some of this gear that you're talking about and kind of how you go about doing your backcountry photography. I think people will enjoy that.
Sure. And, gear is something I'm totally passionate about gear, especially, well, the camera gear and the backpacking gear. I guess I couldn't choose one over the other, but just because they're both vitally important for what I'm doing out there. So on my website, I've actually got a page just dedicated towards gear, and I've got a pretty comprehensive list there of pretty much every item that I use. So you can go, if you've got additional gear questions or whatever, you can go and see all the items that I'm using. And then I've got gear related videos that I've made actually as well that just go over the basics of some of the different systems that I have with my gear. So hopefully that'll be helpful if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I know. And I saw when I was looking through your videos that you've got, some what's in my pack videos and things like that too, which are always helpful, right? So there's a lot of good content out there on that YouTube channel for sure. But and I did notice one of the key pieces of equipment is your sandals.
Oh man, that's a whole nother podcast on its own at this point.
I only met you once, but I knew this was coming.
So, yeah, it's kind of funny. It's become kind of an identifying, piece of footwear. It's funny because I've run into people just in the middle of nowhere before, and I don't have a ton of subscribers or followers on Instagram or whatever. But word has gotten around somehow that there's this crazy guy that goes backpacking in late November wearing sandals in, below freezing temperatures. And word's gotten around, and I've gotten comments on my videos and emails and stuff that I need to wear shoes and just all sorts of stuff. But, they're comfy, and when you're backpacking, there's a whole list of benefits I could go through if we ever wanted to discuss that. But, sandals are amazing. And, once you use them, you're not going back.
Right. Well, they work for you, right? And it's obvious that they work for you. You're not doing it just to try to, show off or anything, or show how strong you are, how tough you are. There's a reason you do it, and that comes through in some of your videos too. I was just giving you a hard time for sure, but
no, it's funny that you mention it because I've had people, like I was saying, that run into me and they just say, "Hey, is your name Jimmy by chance?" Just because I'm wearing sandals, or that silly hat that I wear, my winter hat, in some of my videos. That's another thing people have picked out. But it's kind of become an identifying trait, I guess. I don't know.
There's worse things that could be your identifying traits.
Yeah.
Well, I've got those too, I'm sure. But
So real quick, Jimmy, one last question for me, and then I don't know if Ron has any more questions. But you did mention your gear list. Maybe just a little bit specific on your camera setup that you're using.
I use two different cameras primarily. I've got the Canon 1DX Mark II that I use for the majority of my still images. And then I've got my Canon R5 that I use completely for video at this point. And my primary lens that I use is a Tamron 150-600, their Senket version. And it's been a great lens. I'm currently saving up for a different lens just because that Tamron, it's been through everything, and it's about giving up the ghost at this point. And so I'm saving up for a couple other lenses right now, but that's pretty much my setup right there. And they're great cameras. I do use the R5 for images if I need to be completely silent, just because I do a lot of photography from blinds. And so in scenarios like that where I know the animal's going to book it, if it hears anything, I'll take still images with the R5. But otherwise, I generally use that 1DX Mark II for my images.
Well, I was just going to say that is the lens that anybody that asks what's the first wildlife lens that you would buy, that's the one I steer them toward. Either that or the Sigma. They're a great option and very capable. Obviously, I mean, if you look at your feed and the sharpness that comes with that lens, if you just pay attention to technique and your camera, and I don't think you can beat it, especially for the price.
Yeah, it's a great lens. Just the versatility that it gives you, 150 to 600, that's a huge range. And I found that in good light, you can go all the way up to 600 and get reasonably sharp images. Anything in poor light past 400 or so, it can get soft pretty quick. But otherwise, it's, pretty dang sharp. And it's great for backpacking. It's got that little collar on it, that collar ring, and I just use that as a handle basically when I'm backpacking, and it's great.
Jimmy, where can people find you? On Instagram as well as your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Jimmy B Into the Wild. I'm starting to get a little bit more into Instagram again. I used to post every day. It's been a while. I'm getting back into it a little bit more now. And my YouTube channel is where most of my work is posted these days. And that's just my name, Jimmy Berenstein. And I post weekly videos Sunday morning, just, revolving about everything we've talked about here today. And I do the occasional midweek video as well.
And again, we'll provide links to those in the show notes. So if you have trouble finding them, just go to the show notes for this podcast and you'll be able to find the links. And Jimmy, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. We actually thought about doing this one in the field, and then somebody took too long making dinner. And so it got a little bit late in the evening. So I appreciate you being flexible.
Oh, of course. Thanks again for having me on. It's so much fun to talk to you guys about photography. I mean, we're all passionate about it, and so it's just fun to talk about it. And I love talking with like-minded people about our common passion that we have here.
Yeah, I'm super happy for you, Jimmy. Good luck with the YouTube channel, and I big kudos for taking the leap. It's a scary thing. A lot of people want to do it, and very few do it. And Ron recently did it as well. So it's a scary thing to do. But every single person I've ever heard do it, not one of them says, "Man, I wish I wouldn't have done that." Every single one of them says, "I wish I'd have done it sooner." So there's something to be said for that. It's scary. You got to readjust your priorities. But if there's anybody out there, considering do it, maybe the best advice would be to just get your things in order and make the leap. So, anyways, thank you very much, Jimmy, for joining us tonight, and good luck to you on your channel, and any of the listeners that are listening, go show Jimmy some love, give him some support. Go check out his videos. I think you will genuinely enjoy them.
Yeah, you'll be a subscriber after the first one.
Yeah, no kidding.
They're great if you're having trouble falling asleep at night and you just need a little something to push you over. They're really good that way too. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us, and come back, join us again next week with another episode of Wild and Exposed Podcast.
You've been listening to the Wild and Exposed podcast. If you haven't yet, please give us a rating and a review. And make sure you're subscribed so that you'll get every episode we produce as soon as we drop it. And as always, thanks for tuning in.
We're gonna make it someday. Nothing's gonna get in our way.